When you play the Game of Thrones,
Subscribe and like.
you die. There is no middle ground.
Welcome back to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel. Today's video, little bit of a different setup, but we are going to be talking about Renly and Stannis in A Clash of Kings. I want to talk about their different ideologies and who is really right and who is wrong, because as an audience, as a fandom, I think most people are more fans of Stannis than they are Renly, and that might blind us from the arguments at hand, because both have varying arguments. On Stannis' sides of things, well, he's going with the traditional way that rulership is done. When a father dies or the king dies, usually their son inherits or the next male claimant. There is sometimes disputes about that. The Dance of the Dragons, House of the Dragon is all about that. But traditionally, in this sense, Stannis would be the rightful heir. But if you look at it from a different point of view, Renly may offer a different side of things. Maybe it should be by popular belief. Who do people want to rule? And so that is the whole topic of today's video. We're going to go through both their ideologies and by the end, try to figure out who is right and who is wrong. And so looking at Stannis' camp specifically, his is not kind of the way the show did it, where the show felt like it was more Stannis was power hungry, he was kind of greedy for the throne, all that stuff, maybe mixed in with a little bit of, yes, Stannis was fulfilling the obligation that he should be the next king because, well, Robert had no true-born sons with Cersei. So that's kind of the way that Stannis believes that he should be king, that he should fulfill the duty. It is fallen to him that he should be king because of everything that's come before. Stannis doesn't necessarily in the book personally want to be king. That's what's been thrust upon him. If you think about, for instance, Storm's End, there's another similar issue where who does Stannis back? The king or his brother and Robert? And Stannis begrudgingly has to make a decision in which he backs his brother. That isn't a situation that he wants to be put in, and he necessarily doesn't even maybe want to go against the crown because maybe that is what he feels like his oath is duty bound to, but he himself is put in that position to where he backs his brother for his family and his vow and his duties to his family. And so in this situation, when Stannis rocks up and is sieging Storm's End and we get Renly's Peaches chapter, in a lot of ways he's going to feel betrayed because of what Renly is doing. Renly is upheaving that normal system in which it goes to the next male claimant or the next heir or whatever. Because Renly, in no sense does he have a claim to the throne with the traditional sense. If you want to argue that Robert's, kids with Cersei, if you're the common person and maybe you believe or don't believe that those kids are actually Robert's, it doesn't matter, right? Because if they are Robert's, well, that's 3 claimants above Renly. If you want to say Myrcella, maybe not so because she's a girl in this world, doesn't really back a woman claims, he would still be 4th in line, right? Behind Joffrey, Tommen, Stannis, and Renly. If in the case where Ned, again, figures out that, okay, that Joffrey and Tommen are not actually Robert's children, the still natural order of things would go Stannis and Renly. Well, Renly, in this situation, is a bit closer to the throne, but still, he can't really claim that's his path. That's what makes him legitimate, and that's why he should rule. So Renly has to come at it from a different point of view. Now, I think a lot of this manipulation probably comes from the Tyrells, but it always strikes me that in the show, Renly kind of feels a bit more like a puppet of the Tyrells, whereas in the book, I think Renly is a bit smarter, like maybe has his own thought process. Whereas again, in the show, it took a bit of time to develop, for instance, Renly and Loras's relationship. We get a scene in season 1 where we actually see Loras trying to manipulate Renly and all those things. And I think they were doing the same thing in the book, don't get me wrong, but I think Renly is a bit more of a character, I would say, in the book than he is in the show. And so Renly is coming at it from this idea that, okay, he is the better king. Stannis would not be a good king because of all the reasons that people don't like Stannis. He's too stern and he doesn't like to laugh and he doesn't like enjoyment and all those things. And Renly on the other side of it is the complete opposite. Renly goes for having a good time. He tries to treat people kindly. He's good-natured. People love him. He's very popular. Even in King's Landing, when we're talking about Ned's death, for instance, or the chapter that, he dies in Arya 5 in the first book, a lot of people think about Renly pretty nicely, right? And thinking about, where has he gone as he's fled? And even in A Clash of Kings, a lot of people back Renly. And so Renly believes that because people want him to be king, he should be king. That enables him to be king. But it goes a bit further than that, because not only does Renly have the populace behind him, he also has the forces behind him as well. He has the pretty much most of the power of the South in terms of the Stormlands and the Reach behind him. And so at that point, you look at it and you go, okay, so Renly's argument is he's the more popular king and more people want him to be king than Stannis, and by conquest. He even references in Catelyn 2, A Clash of Kings, a chapter I covered only last week as I'm kind of talking about this. But he says that basically what's the difference, right? What's the difference between Renly pressing his claim and Robert placing his? Robert tried to basically say that, oh yeah, he has some Targaryen, lineage, which is true, right? The Baratheons are tied to the Targaryens. It is rumored that Orys Baratheon, who was the right-hand man basically of Aegon, was a half-brother to him. So there's, a good amount of Targaryen lineage in Robert's blood. You also think about the numerous marriages that happened between the Baratheons and the Targaryens. There is lineage there and claims and all that stuff. But if you think about Robert's rebellion, the true person that should have been the king next is Viserys Targaryen, the beggar king, not Robert. And so if you want to make this whole idea, it's kind of a similar situation, except, well, Robert didn't want the Targaryens on the throne and all that stuff, so Robert himself claimed the throne. And that's the argument that Renly tries to do. And I don't actually even think Renly's argument is all that bad. A lot of democracies in the United States, where I live, how we elect our government official is basically who is the more popular person. For instance, the presidential election, did you want to go for Donald Trump? Did you want to go for Kamala Harris? Now, personally, do I think that either one was the best we have to offer in the country? No, but that is how it is chosen. And I think that it is a better way of doing things than, for instance, blood is what decides who is the king and who is in charge of everyone is not the best idea. So I think when you think about the idea that Renly is presenting, it's kind of a very progressive idea that the person that is the most popular should be king, not necessarily blood or anything like that. And so Renly's, I think, idea and thought process is very compelling. And at first glance, you might say, yes, he is correct. But at the same time, this all really depends on what you believe of Renly. If you believe that Renly Baratheon would be a good king, then yeah, this rationale should be good enough for you. You can justify Renly taking the throne over Stannis. But if you think that Renly wouldn't be so good of a king, then this kind of falls flat. Because in reality, okay, you being a popular king is not leading to the better outcome of a ruler. If you think Stannis is a better ruler than Renly would be, well then, okay, this doesn't make sense at all, right? Just because the popular people, and again, that's another part of it, is not always is the populace correct, right? The populace is not always correct on a decision or things like that. Like if you're in your friend group right now, you may know something to be correct, but maybe your four other friends are debating you on a fact that you know is a fact. That doesn't mean the populace is then right. So there are some holes in logic with Renly's argument, and there's some things that we as an audience have to figure out what we believe, right? Everybody may have a different opinion on Renly, and that will heavily dictate what you believe in Renly's ideas for being king. A lot of it also might be, and I shouldn't say might be, is motivated by self-ambition, by the Tyrells, by Renly maybe himself just wanting to be king blatantly, something that Stannis does not want to be. And so I think it comes down to, I think the central argument of the entire idea really comes down to, who do you really think is a better king? Do you think Stannis is a better king or Renly is a better king? And I think what's great about both candidates is they have pros and cons. Renly is somebody that does not take things necessarily seriously. He's someone that, again, we see this all throughout Catelyn 2 and 3 of A Clash of Kings. He's somebody that doesn't really take things seriously. And especially when you're in a situation like Westeros, medieval times, you do need to take things very seriously. But on the flip side of things, Renly is somebody that's well liked. The people want him to be king. He would be somebody that I think would have the support of a lot of the kingdoms. If you think about, for instance, Aenys Targaryen, the second king of the Targaryen dynasty, he was somebody that had the opposite effect. He was not well loved by anyone in Westeros really at all, and that played a detriment in his reign. Renly would not have that problem, at least at the beginning anyway. Renly is someone also that would be a pretty solid politician. He's been dealing with people like Littlefinger and Varys basically since Robert took the throne. He was on the small council. He is somebody that I think has a lot of positive qualities of a politician, but also some negative qualities of being a king. And so let's flip that then to Stannis. Stannis is somebody that I think has a lot of things that people don't like about him, right? Because he doesn't elude, positivity, or he has the image of a handsome, young king, or putting in policies that necessarily people wouldn't like. For instance, he wants to ban brothels, which is a pretty good idea in my opinion. Brothels really spread a ton of sexual diseases. It's very unsanitary and unhealthy in a lot of ways, especially in a medieval time period in King's Landing. I think that's a good idea. Now, the issue with that's going to be, well, people are going to push back because economically, that is not a good idea for the short term anyway. I think eventually you would be able to fix that issue. But again, short term thinking, economically, brothels bring in a lot of money to the capital, bring in a lot of money to big cities. You think about just other things that he would try and do that wouldn't necessarily be popular, but also would be good ideas. It's kind of the same idea of Aegon V, who was more progressive towards the common folk, treating them better and trying to give them a better life. It's something that was very unpopular because, again, the high lords are the ones that rule Westeros, not the small folk. And so Aegon V was not a well-liked king by a lot of people, especially the higher-ups, the merchants, people that are rich. And so the same idea, I think, would kind of apply to Stannis in certain policies. The other issue that you have with Stannis is not the best politician at times. He can be very stubborn, firm, and all of those things. That isn't to say Stannis is a bad politician, but I don't think he's a great politician either. I think he's somewhere in the middle. At times, Stannis can do a really good job of negotiating with people and things like that. We kind of see that, I think, a lot more towards the end of the 5 books that we have. I think a Dance with Dragons, we see a little bit more of that negotiating side of Stannis. And I even think in like book 3 as well. So I think to me that Stannis is somebody that would have good qualities of a king and also bad qualities of a king, the same as Renly as well. Neither one would necessarily be the best king for Westeros. And that's something that I would love to see what your guys' discussions are in the comments below. What do you think about the debate between Renly and Stannis during A Clash of Kings? And who would you have sided with? Now, I think that's even more of an interesting question. If you were in Westeros, would you side for Renly or would you side for Stannis? I think it's a bit different question when you with hindsight, taking a step back and looking at the actual books as a reader, your answer is probably different. So thank you guys all for watching. I hope the quality was a bit better for you guys. I'm just still working it out with a new setup, a new camera, and I've just started getting new lighting as well. So hopefully it looks better for you guys. And I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.